Welcome to Three Skulls Tavern, a channel devoted to tabletop role-playing games by Free League Publishing. This show is sponsored by WorldMill, online server hosting for the Foundry virtual tabletop. To support the show, head over to patreon.com/MattK. For a minimum of $2 per month, you get access to a ton of extra content. Hello, and welcome to July's Q&A. This is a special Q&A for my Patreon supporters. So, although this is going to be going live, the questions that I'm going to be answering come from Patreon, and the Patreon supporters also get 1 week early access. So, let's jump in. It's raining outside, but it's very, very warm, so I want to keep the window up in the attic where I work open, just to get a bit of a breeze. So hopefully my mic isn't picking up too much rain sound, but if it is, then just consider it nice ambient. If it picks up any harder, I'll probably need to close it, but at the moment the breeze is really nice. So the first question for the month is from Ed. Ed is the GM, our current GM in our Alien campaign. He's been in a number of other games on the channel previously. And I also is a friend of mine who I met as a in-person GM as well. He was GMing me. Anyway, Ed asks, I saw you posted a list of all your favorite games, or of all your games you've played over on Twitter. What are your top 3 favorite games overall, and what are your 3 worst games, and why? Now, this is a question that I could really go down a rabbit hole with, talking about why I like and why I dislike some of these games. So I'm going to try and keep it relatively brief, because there are 6 questions this month. So I'm going to flash up on the screen here the list. Here it is. This is from my a Google Sheet that I've shared. In fact, I'll put the link in the description as well after I've recorded this. So if anybody wants to go have a look at this list in full, you can go ahead and do it. And basically, this is just showing, this kind of shows my history as well. The first time I started playing role-playing games was in '95 when I played the second edition of West End Games' Star Wars. I was a teenager back then, and I then took a break. I played that for about a year, quite heavily with some of my mates, and then I took a break because I kind of I think I kind of hit puberty during or just after that period and started getting interested in girls and didn't really have time for role-playing anymore, and yeah, didn't play any role-playing games again until 2011, which is obviously 10 years ago now. And I had played role-playing games, computer-based role-playing games. I'm still a big video gamer, although I don't play that often these days. So I never really lost track of kind of like what role-playing games are. I just kind of lost track of doing it with other people. The whole kind of improv and imagination aspect that obviously a computer role-playing game doesn't really capture as much. That kind of collaborative story weaving, the collaborative world building, all that kind of stuff, the really tailored stories to your characters. And so yeah, 2011 I started again, and I joined, I did it by joining Meetup in my local area in Bristol in the UK, and I started looking for groups, and you can see that there's like 3 games at the top here. And in fact, D&D 4th edition should come below these other 2, but I ended up sorting this after I'd written it in an actual list of when I'd played all the games. I didn't actually put a numbered list next to it. Had sorted it by rating, and then resorted it by the date, then by what, and then by this when. So it's all now sorted in alphabetical order based on the year. So I've kind of lost that. But I think the first game I played was Tribate in 2011. I'm not answering the question. I got back into gaming in 2011 with D&D 4th, with basically joining a home group that I'm still with today. We were playing at the time D&D 4th edition. As you can see in terms of my ratings, this is going to be one of the worst games that I've played when I'm talking about the worst 3. But if I just kind of hit this rating thing and say, let's look at the ones that I've rated as a 5 and talk about them. yeah, you can see from the list here, there's quite a lot on here, games that I rate as a 5. So these are games I really, really like. And picking 3 is really hard, but I've had a little think about this. And the ones I'm going to select are going to be Delta Green, the first edition of Wolfrup, and Mutant Year Zero. And just a quick explanation for those 3. Wolfrup First Edition, I have played all 4 editions of Wolfrup. As you can see on the list here. You can't see them all on the list now because I've filtered on 5, but I have played all 4 editions. And Wolfrup First Edition and Second Edition I really, really like. I think I slightly prefer First Edition, even though it's a little bit odd at times. Just because of the setting, and I mean mainly the setting, but I do like a lot of the mechanics that it brings. It was my first exposure to the D100 system, which I do like, where you're rolling D100 and you're rolling under your, equal to or under your skill, and that just kind of makes a lot of sense. You've got a lot more granularity in terms of like skills than you do with a D20. Just a lot to like about it, but the setting really is what blew me away, and it still keeps me coming back to Wolfrup. I love Wolfrup. It's one of my favorite settings. So that's one of them. Mutant Year Zero is what got me into this channel. It got me into the Year Zero engine. It got me excited about designing my own stuff. I still think very fondly back on my time with Mutant Year Zero. I haven't played it in a long time. I have done a few solo episodes on this channel. But really doing anything more than a couple of episodes has been quite a long time since I've done that. And it's possible we might run a big campaign of it starting next year, although it's in the running with Symbaroum as to what the big campaign's going to be. And Symbaroum is edging forward just ever so slightly at the moment. But Mutant Year Zero I still really love. It's a great game. It's, again, got a few little niggly bits that have since been ironed out with later iterations of the Year Zero engine, but there's still a lot to love with it. And I love the setting, I love the mechanics, and it's just a great game all around. And finally, Delta Green. Delta Green took a kind of a rule set, the BRP system, that by then I'd kind of been introduced to with Call of Cthulhu. I've obviously played a lot of Wolfrup, which is a BRP derivative, and just really showed. And by the way, by this Delta Green, I'm referring to kind of the second edition or the new edition of the game as well, not the original expansion for Call of Cthulhu. And Delta Green just really kind of showed how you can take a relatively crunchy system and you can really file it down to the bare bones in a quite an elegant way, and basically have something that is relatively rules light but still feels relatively crunchy. And it's just a masterclass in my opinion of that sort of tweaked game design, where you're taking somebody else's system and you're tweaking it and optimizing it in the same way that you could say Cepheus takes a Traveler system and tries to do the same thing. Although I've never actually played Cepheus, so I can't really talk about that. It's also what I've done with Year Zero Mini. I've taken the Year Zero engine and tried to really simplify it down and create something cohesive out of it. But yeah, Delta Green is just great, and of course, Delta Green as a game is amazing. It's basically X-Files with a bit of Cthulhu influence, and what's not to love about that? It's just great. Really, really, really good. Unfortunately, I've only played it twice in 2 one-shots, so it's a game I would love to play more of. I'd love to get in a campaign of, broken bonds, which is basically how your character kind of, it gets modeled as they slowly start kind of, losing a grip on their lives as they get exposed to all this horrible shit. So Delta Green is just great. I would love to play more of it, but it definitely is almost always on when I make a top 10 or a top 3 list, Delta Green is always at the top there. It's very inspirational for lots of reasons, and yeah, I really love it. So let's take the flip side of that and look at my 3 worst games ever. And I didn't tweak this. This is exactly how I rated them previously, and this would be whoops. There's 4 there actually. Sorry. These are the 4 games I've played where I've said they're terrible. I would hate to play them. You can ignore this SLA Industries. I haven't played that. That's just a different column. So ignore that. That's not saying anything about SLA Industries. I have no exposure to it other than knowing what it is. So, D&D 4th edition. I hate the game. There's a lot of reasons for hating the game. It just doesn't really mesh very well with what I enjoy about role-playing. It feels like some sort of very actiony, video gamey combat simulator. Every single class is built around combat, even the ones that don't seem to be combat focused. And it's very bland, like all of the different things you can do. You could be a wizard, or you could be a fighter, or you could be a rogue. All of your daily abilities are basically mechanically doing the same thing. It's just like the little bit of fluff that's written for them that makes them stand out and be different. And it's just, we played a lot of it in my home group. We migrated from 4th edition to D&D 5th edition. I like 5th edition a bit more, but I still don't like D&D very much. And there's just all sorts of other mechanical things I don't really like about D&D, like the HP bloat, as it's called. I kind of bounced off that. I mean, coming again from West End Games Star Wars, where you had, I think it was like 4 wound tracks from memory. Looking at HP, and I'd played Baldur's Gate and stuff, so I knew about like how D&D worked. I knew what HP was, getting into it and all the rest of it. But actually playing it, we became demigods very, very quickly, and it just very hard for me to get into the game when I'm just not into this like ultra heroic, epic fantasy stuff. When I read fantasy novels, I read a lot, and I tend to like dark fantasy and hard sci-fi. So the kind of more, although Star Wars is a glaring exception to that, mainly because of nostalgia. And I love horror as well. So for me, I like darker and grittier things and themes in my games and my media, generally speaking. And D&D just doesn't really offer that. I know people have hacked it to try and do that, but in my opinion, they're better off choosing a much better system for it rather than trying to change a game made to be telling epic heroic stories, which is what 5th edition does, to do something different. So that's D&D. Das Schwarze Auge, or The Black Eye as it's known in English, is the biggest game that's played here in Germany where I live. And I tried playing it in 2019. I found a local group and went through character creation and played the first session before I left and said, no, sorry, this game is really not for me. There's a lot of reasons for it. The setting is a little bit problematic. I know there's a lot of Germans who love the setting, but looking at it from a fresh perspective, I'm not German. I've moved to Germany through because my wife is German. And looking at it, it's clear that it's a setting that was written in the 80s and is full of problematic stereotypes that have slightly been toned down, but are definitely still there. I know there's a lot of apologists for it, but it's very hard for me to ignore. And when the Germans say you don't play Das Schwarze Auge for the mechanics, you play it for the setting, it's kind of saying something. So if you don't like the setting or you find issues with the setting, there's not a lot mechanically there for you to like. Even the fans of Das Schwarze Auge hate the mechanics or are fondly criticize the mechanics, just like Germans tend to fondly criticize the bureaucracy here. And it is a lesson in bureaucracy. It's very crunchy. Anytime you're rolling a skill, you're rolling 3 attribute dice, and you're comparing the result on every single one of those rolls. So let's say you're rolling against your strength, agility, and constitution. I can't remember what the attributes are called, but just for argument's sake, let's say it's those, and the skill requires you to roll on those 3 attributes. You roll on those 3 attributes. You have to know which dice is tied to which attribute, because the result for each of those dice is going to determine whether you pass or fail against each attribute, so that you get this kind of simulationist explanation of why you failed that roll if you failed it. And it's just a level of crunch that is absolutely ridiculous. I think it probably could be played online fairly well with a good virtual tabletop, but we played it by rolling some bones at a table before Corona hit, and my God, it was a crunchy, horrible thing. So Das Schwarze Auge, I really, really don't like. And finally, Wrath and Glory. We're currently doing a 4th edition season. Sorry, not 4th edition. A Warhammer 40k season over on the Mud and Blood podcast, which I co-host. and we reviewed recently Wrath and Glory, and I had run one shot of it previously before we'd done the review, and I just really don't like it. I've come to like the 40k setting, although originally I was kind of not drawn to it whatsoever. But Wrath and Glory, I think it does not fit the setting at all. It's a very, very messy game system mechanically. Although it is very similar to Year Zero Engine on the face of things, where you have things like... I'm just going to close this very quickly because you've seen the whole list now. You have basically a d6 dice pool game where you're rolling against you're rolling for attribute plus skill, a number of d6, and you're looking for successes on the dice. So it's not that far off from what the Year Zero Engine does, but the extra levels of complexity on top of all that are insane. And for me, I just bounced really hard off of it for a number of reasons. But mechanically, I just think it's a messy game. I don't think it's very well designed personally. And yeah, there's just nothing really I liked about it. So if I would ever want to play in the 40k system, the 40k setting, I would never ever reach for Wrath and Glory. I would reach for perhaps one of the Fantasy Flight systems, or I would maybe homebrew or use a different system for it. So those are my top 3, my worst 3 games that I've played. Thank you very much, Ed. And next question is also from Ed. Ed asks, I know you're a big fan of the Year Zero engine, but what other, shall we call it, engine or game system have you thought, yeah, this is a good fit for different genres or settings? Going back to my comment earlier about me being drawn to horror, dark fantasy, and hard sci-fi, I like things that are a bit grittier. And that's actually what really drew me to the Year Zero engine. The Year Zero engine is a very gritty system. You just look at any of the, other than Tales from the Loop, where you can't die, any of the other games really have a pretty harsh death mechanic in them, where you get a critical result, you get a critical injury, you roll a d66, and if you roll high enough on that table, you're probably going to be instantly killed. And there are no fate points or anything like that built in. Obviously, for my Forbidden Lands solo game, I've added a fate point mechanic, but that's kind of by the by. And that lethality is a big draw for me for the Year Zero engine system. So for me to say, you know, which ones have I thought, yeah, this is a good system, I'm personally drawn. Now, this isn't to say games like Savage Worlds, which I have played and I have enjoyed, aren't good. They're just the kind of action-y pulp sort of style doesn't really mesh with what I enjoy in a game. I want something a little bit more gritty, really. So the ones I can recommend are BRP. BRP. I've skimmed the BRP, like the actual basic roleplay PDF, which you can get freely available. I think it's freely available. I might have bought it. I can't remember. I've had it for a very long time. But really, what I find quite like the best about the BRP system is that it has been hacked and tweaked for a very, very, very long time in lots of different ways. You could look at things like RuneQuest and the spin-offs like Mithras and OpenQuest. You look at Call of Cthulhu and its big spin-off Delta Green. Woofrup theoretically is a spin-off of BRP, and I don't know, it's just there's something about the, you know, lots of skills and having some attributes which are disconnected from those skills, and you're basically just looking at a single number when you're making a roll, and you're rolling a d100 and you're trying to get equal to or under that number. It's all very intuitive because when you look at 100, you think like, you know, how good am I at something is on a basis from 0 to 100. Although lots of these games have very low skill scores, so even something that you might have gone to university to learn, you might only have like a 50 or a 60 in it, which makes you think like, okay, I'm probably more educated than the majority of the people on this planet if I've studied something at university, and yet I'm only in the 50 to 60th, like I'm only going to succeed at knowing something or doing something with a skill 50 or 60% of the time. Seems a bit low. A Delta Green kind of fixes that a little bit, but it kind of feeds into the whole gritty feeling of the BRP system, is that failure happens quite a lot. And yeah, I really like that system. Troubleshooters is another game from Helmgast out of Sweden. which takes a kind of similar approach to BRP with lots of tweaks to it. And that's quite an interesting game as well. They do away with the characteristics or the attributes, and it's nothing but skills. And with a D100 system that it also includes pips, it's quite intriguing, it's quite interesting, and it just kind of, again, goes to show that there's a lot you can do with a basic BRP model. Arguably, Mothership has been inspired by BRP, but I don't know how much of that's necessarily the case. It's quite a lightweight game. It's a D100 roll-under system. It has a fairly big list of skills, considering that it is a kind of an OSR lightweight game. So I wouldn't necessarily class it as BRP, but you can certainly see some BRP influences in it. So BRP is a great system, in my opinion. Another one that I don't have any personal experience with, but I see a lot of hacks and things happening with it, is Traveler, or Cepheus. Cepheus is the kind of open. There's like a free version of the Cepheus engine. Cepheus or Cepheus Lite, maybe, I think is what it's called. Takes Traveler, like the first edition of Traveler maybe, and tries to like update it, create this like open gaming system that other people can hack. And yeah, it looks quite interesting. And I've seen that there have been some games coming out recently. I've bought, I think there was a drive-through RPG deal of the day like a week ago, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, that looked interesting. I bought it because it was relatively cheap, and I was quite surprised to see it was a fantasy or like maybe a historical fiction sort of genre game. And I was quite surprised to see that it used the Cepheus engine. So it's clear that Cepheus engine, basically Traveler, has really been kind of spread out and being used all over the place. I've gone through the character creation of the original Traveler with somebody who walked me through it over the course of like an hour, and had a lot of fun with it. So I'm kind of aware of how that works, which is quite a famous part of Traveler as well. And I've got PDFs of the Mongoose first and maybe second edition. I've skimmed through the rules of that one as well, which is obviously laid out a bit better. So I kind of know a little bit about Traveler. I've read a little bit of it, but I don't have any practical experience of it. So that's a game I would recommend, and I do like the look of for other genres and things, at least the ones I'm interested in. Two quick ones then to finish off. Ironsword. I've really gotten into solo gaming recently. Ironsword is a masterclass in design for Ironsword. I've talked about it before on this channel. I'm using the Ironsword oracles in both the Forbidden Lands and the Twilight 2000 solo and co-op games. I'm probably going to be I probably won't be using the oracles in the upcoming The One Ring solo game I'm going to be running next year, because Sean Tompkin, the author of Ironsword, is doing the solo spin of The One Ring. So he's probably going to be putting a lot of cool stuff like his own oracles and stuff into The One Ring. So I probably won't feel the need to hack some Ironsword into it. But Ironsword is a really great game. In the Ironsword community, a lot of people are doing lightweight hacks of it, where they're trying to reduce the number of moves or combine everything into a single move, and finding that it works really well in that respect. There's just a lot that it does that's really, really cool. And it's not necessarily a really gritty game, but it's fun, and I really like it. And people have hacked it to all sorts of different settings and stuff. I've seen people talking about or writing or creating zombie spins of it, creating Wild West spins of it. Obviously, Starforged is coming out, which is kind of like a Firefly-esque sort of spin of Ironsword. Sean has mentioned in the past that he wanted to do a kind of looks like pirates, but in a kind of Arctic fantasy setting, perhaps. So sort of like nautical games with it. So yeah, Ironsword's great, and I think it's there's plenty of potential for lots of different genres for it. And last but not least, Best Left Buried. Best Left Buried is an OSR game that I reviewed for the Mud and Blood podcast. It's a 2d6 system where you're rolling 2d6 and comparing it to a target value, a target number. But combat adds a third dice in there, and the way it works is you roll the 3d6 in combat, and you get to choose which of those two are going to be used to hit, and the third dice is the damage dice. The damage die. And that's just I ran Wolfrup using it, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's quite a lightweight system. But that neat little mechanic is just mind-bogglingly brilliant, and I really think Best Left Buried could be ported into other genres quite easily. So I'm gonna leave it there. That's it's quite a long time I've been talking about game systems, and yeah, thanks for the question, Ed. Attila's asked the next question. Attila asks, I would like to add a twist to Ed's question. What game or setting would be a brilliant fit to Year Zero engine? Can you imagine Wolfrup 5th edition being published by Forbidden Lands? So kind of two questions, and then I'll talk about them one at a time. What game or setting would be a brilliant fit for Year Zero engine? I mean, with the open gaming license now, there's a lot of stuff being worked on, so I can't really see anything that hasn't already got somebody working on it. Like Cyberpunk, for example. I think Cyberpunk would be a great fit. We have at least 2 Cyberpunk games being developed. I've created a Cyberpunk spin of Year Zero Mini, which technically is a Year Zero engine game, although very lightweight and heavily inspired by Electric Bastion Land. Pirates would be a really great fit. And there is an established third-party publisher called Firelock Games who are creating a game called Under the Black Sail. And that is a historical pirate game using the Year Zero engine. I'm very excited about that one. I love the pirate genre. I lived in Bristol for a very long time, and Bristol is kind of considers itself the kind of home of pirates, because that's where Blackbeard was from, and a lot of very famous pirates set sail from Bristol. And in fact, the typical pirate accent, Armidabber, that's basically Bristolian. So I love Bristol, and the pirate genre, I've always been a fan of it since being a kid. So it's very exciting and I've never played a pirate, like a historical pirate role-playing game. I have run a fantasy pirate campaign once using Shadow of the Demon Lord, and that was fun, but it's not quite the same as, I played a lot of Sid Meier's Pirates back in the day as well on PC. I think it was MS-DOS or maybe Windows 95. Anyway, I loved that game. I still love that game. So for me, there's just something really cool about, setting sail, sailing the Caribbean and doing piracy things. So I'm really excited about that one, and I think it would be a brilliant fit for the Year Zero engine as well. So, can I imagine Wolfrup 5th edition being published by Free League? I hope they don't do it, because both Pitchfork and Nord Saga started off with me trying to do this exact thing, which is hacking Wolfrup to the Year Zero engine. And the only reason I've changed them significantly so that they're not really too much like Wolfrup anymore, other than thematically, is that I don't have the rights to the Wolfrup, to the Warhammer setting, of course. That's for Games Workshop to dole out to people. And I'm kind of more interested in the more narrow, narrowing in on specific themes within the setting, rather than what Wolfrup does, which is kind of quite a large slice of life. You could be a peasant, you could be a criminal, you could be a nobleman, you could be an academic, you could be a wizard's apprentice, you could be anything really, and you could become some very powerful person within the Empire. Theoretically, you could also become even an Elector Count, or you could even become the Emperor, in your campaign if you really wanted to, and the system would kind of support that. You had some advanced careers in all editions of Wolfrup, which are, really advanced. And for me, the magic of Wolfrup is in the kind of the grittier, lower down, dirtier stories, if you will, the kind of more focusing on the commoners. And that is very much what Pitchfork is all about. Pitchfork is basically Wolfrup from a commoner's perspective. Although I've decided to set it in actual, not quite Middle Ages Europe. In Germany specifically, so actually taking, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit, but Nord Saga is then a little bit more it's going to be using the Forbidden Lands system, but thematically it's kind of like Wolfrup. It's just an alternate history setting, so it's got a lot of Viking Norse elements to it. It's set in our world, but alternate history, of course. So anyway, that also started off as a Wolfrup hack. So Wolfrup definitely would work in the Year Zero engine system. If Free League get the rights to produce the 5th edition, I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. If it were to happen, I would hope that Pitchfork and Nord Saga are already out, because the sales on those two products would probably drop, significantly after there would be an official version. So I think it would be a great fit. If Free League do end up getting it, I hope they end up hiring me to work on it. But at the moment, I am doing my own games inspired by it. So I've got time. I think because there's a lot of 4th editions, Wolfrup 4th edition stuff still being churned out. Thanks for the question, Attila. I've got 2 more questions coming. I've got 3 more questions. The next 2 are from JP. JP's first one says, I was interested in Twilight 2000, but after joining your Discord and Patreon and watching your videos, I became completely hooked on Forbidden Lands and Alien. My question is, what modules would you recommend for Forbidden Lands and Alien on Foundry? So, to help answer that question, I am once again going to bring up my web browser, and I'm going to show you which modules I'm using. So there's a caveat here. This is the Forbidden Lands system in Foundry. This is the modules that I'm using. These are the ones that are activated. Some of them, like keybind lib and lib color settings, library, anything that has lib in it or library, they're modules that are required for other modules, so you can kind of ignore them. But really, this is the list. So we've got About Time, Actor Sheet Macro, Background List Pins, Calendar Weather, Compendium Folders. I mean, you can read through the list here. Pause the screen if you want to, but there, scroll down to the bottom here. These are the ones that we're using. The reason there are some there that aren't ticked is either because this Foundry instance is shared with Twilight 2000, and some, like Trigger Happy, is used by Twilight 2000, but I'm not using it myself in Forbidden Lands. Or I've used them and decided not to use them and haven't removed the module yet, like One Journal. So that's the list. Yeah. And I recommend using all of them. I'm using basically everything on this list. I have gone through, and I've gone through 2 different culls of the modules after I'd run a few sessions of Forbidden Lands, and removed the ones that I just wasn't using, and thinking, well, it's kind of pointless to have these other modules running and potentially slowing down my Foundry instance when I don't have a great internet bandwidth to start off with. So I'm going to customize this and just use the ones that I need. And this is what I've been left with. So that's the list. And now we're going to jump over to Alien. Alien has a much smaller list of what's being used. And Alien, this is sharing a Foundry instance with... Ooh, what is it sharing? I'm not sure. I think at the moment it's sharing one with our old Coriolis game, and also when I'm going to be setting up the One Ring game that we're going to be running on the channel, it'll be going in this Foundry instance as well. Oh, one thing let me jump back to Forbidden Lands. One big thing to point out here is that as you can see over here on the side, I am using Foundry version 0.710 still. Foundry has been updated to 0.8, and now it's at 0.8.8. If you look here, you can see I'm at 0.8.6 for the Alien game, so it's much more up to date. There are actual updates needed for both the Foundry version and the Alien version, but I haven't done them yet. There's various reasons why I haven't done that, but long story short, some of these modules might not have been updated to version 0.8. If they haven't, then I won't be able to use them when I update Foundry. And I'm planning on updating Foundry fairly soon to the new version. It's just that there's going to be a lot of work to reassign my macros, and I need some time to be able to sort that out. So at the moment, I need to record episodes for my Forbidden Lands game, which is why I haven't done it yet. And I don't want to risk breaking it and some stuff not working when I need to record. So anyway, just a bit of a caveat there that some of these macros might not work with the new version of Foundry. So in Alien, much smaller list, we've got the Alien RPG CRT UI. That's the user interface that you're seeing here. It's got this kind of, you can, I don't know if you can tell, but there's like these, you got that, see this, like this line that's kind of distortion that's kind of going up and down. You've got the flicker that's going, you've got these like vertical, these horizontal lines going across everything. Even the menu buttons here, everything about this is all the user interface. and it's been that module is basically making it look like that. So it's just really immersive. It really makes it feel like a 1970s tech. Yeah, highly recommended. I'm using the official Alien module, which is this one here. We're using Dice So Nice, which rolls physical dice on the table when we're rolling it. Pings allows Ed or anyone to basically hold down a mouse button and it'll ping where they're talking about, which is quite nice. I'm not using that in the other one. Selective Show, Settings Extender, Show Art, Turn Marker, and Wayland Alien UI theme. Now, I'm not sure which of those are being used actively by Ed, but those are the ones he's using for Alien. So Alien is really not using a whole lot, in my opinion. I'm not sure how many of these things are actually, actively being used. I know that pings, we use pings a lot. The Dice So Nice is definitely something we use, and the Alien RPG CRT UI is definitely one that we like as well. In fact, I'm just looking at this. I think the Wayland Alien UI theme and the Alien RPG CRT UI go together. They're kind of recommended that you do both of them, and they together create this nice theme and effect that's happening here. So, thank you very much. Those are the modules. Thanks for the question, JP. Second question from JP. More questions. Okay, I've got 3 here. We'll do them one at a time. Or actually, there's more than 3. What suggestions do you have for someone who's just starting in the virtual tabletop world? Whew. Wow, that's a big question, actually. Almost like a question I want to do a video about, in fact, about virtual tabletop, virtual gaming. Because I get asked a lot of questions about things like how I set up Foundry, and people asking questions about how Foundry is used when it's clear from the questions that they haven't watched any tutorials or read the tutorials from Foundry itself. Are kind of jumping in with both feet. Foundry is relatively complex compared to some of the other options on the market. I would suggest the best place to start off is keeping it theater of the mind, not playing a game that requires battle maps or minis or anything like that. And really, there's a website called, I'm gonna actually flash this up on the screen as well. It's called Miro. And of course, I need to log in. So let me do that offline here for a second. And I'll open a board. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You get 3 boards for free before you have to pay something, but there's it's relatively full-featured, really, considering what you can do with it. So if I click on my 3 Skulls, no, that's something else. We'll go with this one, the 3 Skulls Tavern Solo board. This is basically an online virtual whiteboard. And the nice thing about it is you can invite other people to come and use it, and they can move stuff around. They can have their own tokens or things and kind of mess around with stuff. And as you can see here, I had it's still loading assets in, so you need to kind of load it before you need it, so it has time for things to pop in. But you can see here that this is all of the stuff I needed for my Mutant Year Zero solo campaign that I ran. I was planning on doing Forbidden Lands at one time, my solo Forbidden Lands game, using Miro as well. But basically, each of these are basically screenshots from the PDF, and they're just saved as PNG files, and then uploaded here with as images to the board, resized, and you can lock them. You can if I press to unlock it, you can see that this is one long thing, but it's grouped. So if I ungroup it, click away, click back in, you can see these are different files, and I can move them around. They snap to a grid, which is really nice, and then you can group them together by just shift clicking. I mean, it's really it's a really slick program. Miro is used by a lot of big companies for online, as an online whiteboard, but it's really good for having a virtual tabletop because it's free. It's very easy to use. The UI is really easy to use. It works brilliantly on mobile phones and tablets, and it's just great. Obviously, you can't roll dice with it, but just for using for handouts and keeping it for theater of the mind and stuff, Miro is really good, really great place to start. It's how I started. I didn't actually. That's not true. I started with Roll20. I was with Roll20 for a little while, but I never got into it. I never really played with it that much, even though I've got a few hundred hours in it. Most of those hundreds of hours are spent, struggling with the UI, struggling with Roll20's back end, and trying to get stuff planned to run. I have played quite a few games in Roll20 as well, and when a GM is using it and they know what they're doing, it runs a lot better. But it's still I just bounce off of it really well. I don't think I've ever played in a game where Roll20's audio or video ever worked properly for everyone in the call. We've always used an external audio or video solution alongside it. Now, Foundry is exactly the same. We don't use any kind of... I've never used any inbuilt audio or visual stuff in Foundry. I'm not even sure if it has it. I think it might actually have it. I've never even tried. But just because I have a pro Zoom account, and Zoom is just really good for that sort of thing. It's very stable, and I don't have any issues with it. So I'm not saying that that's a necessary thing to have for virtual tabletop, but I think if you would have that, it would be nice. It's one less thing to think about. Just that Roll20 for me was really buggy. So I started with Roll20, and then when I started doing this channel, I was looking for more slick virtual tabletops to use. And I used Miro initially for our Forbidden Lands game. Then I think moved to Gtove, which is another open source three-dimensional mapping program, which is under development. It's a really brilliant free thing to use as well. There's a little bit of a learning curve learning how to use it, although I've not, since kind of using Foundry, I've not really gone back to Gtove, so I haven't really seen how it is now. But Gtove could be like a good stepping stone to go from Miro into something a little bit more fully featured. But Foundry will have all the bells and whistles you could possibly need. It's very powerful. You pay for it once, and then a lot of the Year Zero Engine games, if you're into the Year Zero Engine, which I assume you're watching this video, you are all getting official modules for them. Now what that means is you can play all of the games for free. You don't have to buy anything extra to play the games. But if you want everything to be preloaded into Foundry, so all the NPCs are pre-populated, the entire text of the game is populated in journals that you can click on and go through. You pay a price for that, and they are premium modules which have all the content there. The money goes to, the bulk of the money goes to Free League. In fact, you buy it through their web store. And that's how we're doing Forbidden Lands and Alien. All that, both of those games are using premium modules. So when you're doing that, the character sheets are interactive. You click on a skill, it rolls the correct dice for it. You take some damage. It automatically figures out how many dice the next time you roll that. It's just really, really slick, really good system. But it is technically there are some hurdles that you kind of have to get over to start using it. So if you're a Luddite or you don't really get on well with trying to you get frustrated very quickly by fiddling around with technology to get things to work, you might not have a very strong first impression of Foundry, because it does require a little bit of that. My day job, by the way, is an IT technician, so I don't have any issues with that. I've played all of the Bethesda Elder Scrolls series and Fallout games, and the first thing I do when I play them is I go straight to the mod pages and I download all the mods that look great and modify the hell out of those games, because I love doing that. And I end up spending probably more time modding than I do playing for some of those games. But I enjoy it. So for me, Foundry, I'm not saying Foundry is modding Skyrim or Fallout 4 or anything like that. But it did remind me that at times it's much more stable in that regard. I didn't find a lot of modules clashing with each other. Although I think if you do go down the rabbit hole of installing lots of modules, then there can start to be clashes and stuff. But I have what I consider to be a fairly big list of modules on my Forbidden Lands game. Nothing is clashing. Everything works really fine in that. So, how do you begin this quest? I've kind of just answered that. I would recommend starting with Miro, trying to keep it relatively theater of the mind, not worrying so much about battle maps and minis and that sort of thing. Do I need a big setup with multiple monitors, microphones, and headsets, or will my laptop be fine just to start with? Your laptop will be absolutely fine if you're using Miro to start with. Ed GMs our Foundry game, and he GMs it from a laptop, so even if you're using Foundry, a laptop will be fine. If you decide to go with something like Fantasy Grounds or Tabletop Simulator, they have higher hardware requirements, so you would probably find your laptop would struggle with them. Multiple monitors. I have two widescreen monitors, 1440p. But that's mainly because I'm also streaming, and that's only really the reason why I have two. Because when you're streaming, you have lots of windows open you have to keep track of, and I have every square inch of my two monitors covered in stuff that I'm using for streaming. And I tend to mostly play with streaming these days, so like I need two monitors. Most people won't need them. Microphones and a headset I have right here. You can just see it creeping in. There's a microphone. I have a microphone on a boom stand, but also I do another podcast, so having good quality microphone is important for sound clarity. You don't need it. You can have the mic. I would actually recommend that you get a headset mic at least, because the technology used in them, they tend to be what's called cardioid technology. It's on a booms. It's like on a little boom thing usually, and the mic is kind of pointing towards your mouth, and it's just picking up sound from that direction. It's designed to just pick up sound from your mouth, so it's much better at isolating background sound and not picking all that up. Whereas if you're using the mic on your laptop, it is omnidirectional. Well, not omnidirectional because it like kind of pointing forward, but they're designed to pick up all the ambient around it as well. And you're usually not that close to it either. Whereas with a headset mic, you're really close to the mic, so it's much more sensitive to picking up your voice, coming at it from here, and it's not going to be picking up a lot of ambient sound. Whereas a laptop, you might need to pick up sound from like a meter away or more. So they tend to just grab everything, and you get really echoey, kind of mushy sound from that. I'm a little bit picky with this. Obviously, a laptop will be just fine, but I think for most people, one of the requirements for people to be players or GMs on this stream is that they have to have a headset mic. Even if it's just a simple pair of Apple's AirBuds, I think they're called, or whatever the Apple headset is. Even with having just a little mic on on the cable, we've had people do that as well, and that's fine. The sound quality is okay, it's fine. But a headset mic or a dedicated microphone are requirements for this channel, and even then some of the audio isn't that great. So obviously having a standalone mic is going to give you great audio quality, but you don't really need it. I think a headset, if you've got a headset with a mic on it, you're good to go. Last, what other programs or websites would you recommend to enhance my experience as both a player and a GM? That depends on the game you're playing, really. If you're playing something lightweight, if you're playing Forbidden Lands, for example, Worm Tales, WYRM Tales, is brilliant for random generation of stuff. People have created all sorts of amazing, table rollers and things for Forbidden Lands, NPC generators, just all sorts of cool stuff. Mutant Year Zero, there is something called Find the Path, or Find My Path, I think, written by Stefouch, who is the creator of Sabadius, which is a Discord dice roller. That is an amazing tool for zone exploration. Highly recommend it. If you don't want to roll physical dice and you want to roll digital dice, and you're using Miro, you need to be using Discord, and you need to be using a Discord bot called Sabadius. If you are playing a Year Zero engine game, it rolls dice for all of the Year Zero engine games. It does it really well. It looks really great. It has a lot of functionality, and I would never if Foundry didn't exist with the cool dice that it rolls automatically, I would still be rolling Foundry dice. I would be rolling Sabadius dice in Discord. That's what we used at the beginning when I was using Miro and when I was using Gtove for this stream, or for this channel. Other than that, again, it depends on the game. So if you have some game ideas, it sounds like you're getting started in the virtual gaming world. Reach out on Discord and give me a shout with the game that you're playing, and I will give you some more recommendations for cool websites and stuff. Alternatively, if it is a Year Zero engine game, then go to the Year Zero Worlds Discord, have a look through the resources channels for the game that you're going to be playing, and then ask there, because there are a lot of people in that Discord server who are creating those tools, and a lot of people using some tools that they might not have shared yet. So rather than just what I have in my head, which is quite a bit, because I'm the main admin on that Discord server. I kind of keep track of a lot of this stuff. It doesn't beat a huge community of people who are all kind of using various tools and things. Okay, Last but not least, we've got Kobiak on Discord asking, if you have the time, what are your thoughts on separate harm tracks for physical and mental health in RPGs? Like Wits and Empathy in Forbidden Lands, the stress mechanic in Alien, etc. Waste of time, challenging endeavor, or the future of RPG simulation of the real world? Well, I wouldn't say it's the future of RPG simulation, because Call of Cthulhu had an insanity track and hit points going back to the 80s. So, having separate physical and mental health tracks has been happening for a very, very long time. So I don't think that's the future. I think that's been the case for a long time. I think we're in the golden age of RPGs right now, where it's really easy with streaming and with open gaming licenses, and even the pandemic has helped, where people have had more free time to make games, and we've just seen that, and Kickstarter as well. Crowdfunding has also been absolutely amazing for our hobby, and as a result, we're seeing lots of games. We're seeing a lot of people experimenting with things, and there's a lot more that you see than going back, say, 10 or 15 years, where a lot of things were still based around D20, in my opinion, because like 3rd edition of D&D had the open gaming license, and there was a lot of extra stuff coming out for that. And I don't remember whether the World of Darkness games, I have played Hunter the Reckoning, I don't remember that having a separate mental health track. I definitely had like a physical health track with like the wounds and like how that worked, but I don't remember there being some sort of mental health track. Maybe some of the spin-off games did. But my point is, like, some of the big games that were kind of around until the sort of 10, 15 years ago didn't necessarily have 2 tracks or more than 1 track. So it's been more of a recent thing that lots of games have these. I think it's just because lots of people are making games these days. I don't think it's a waste of time. My Year Zero Mini, which is a very lightweight game, has 2 tracks. It has a stress and it has a harm track. So I obviously am putting money where my mouth is. That's what I think is important in a game. I think it's important to split the 2. I think it's important to have the opportunity for you to be shamed or terrorized, or like to have fear render you incapable of playing, in the same way that if you take enough physical harm, you're going to be incapable of, incapable of, continuing on with the adventure. So yeah, I don't think it's a waste of time at all. Challenging endeavor, I'm not sure what you mean by that exactly, whether you're talking about that from a design perspective. If you're talking about it from a design perspective, it can be challenging, or it could be relatively simple. Year Zero Mini, I mean, I am using the Vazen mechanic there, so I'm kind of just stealing something from another game. Year Zero Mini is taking a lot of inspiration from other games and just kind of tweaking them a bit to make them fit together nicely. And I've got this beautiful Frankenstein's monster, in my humble opinion, which just works. And yeah, Nord Saga is based on the Forbidden Lands engine, so that's going to have different health tracks, just like Forbidden Lands does. Pitchfork has a separate physical and mental health track as well, currently called Vitality and Stability. And I would probably use it for almost all the games I would run, so in some respect. So yeah, I think it's really important. Not really important, but it's what I like. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, and if you're not using them, you're not the game isn't worth playing, or you've designed a bad game. There are plenty of games for whatever reason want to have mental effects handled in a different way, and whether that be by roleplay wise, or there's some other kind of mechanic that handles it, or it's just not interesting, or it's not part of the desired themes of the game, that's absolutely fine. They don't necessarily need them. And like a lot of the games in the OSR do not have separate mental health tracks. They just have hit points. And while I'm not a D&D fan, I do like a lot of the games in the OSR, and I didn't mention any of the top 3. Electric Bastion Land is a game I really, really like. So if I could add like a 4th one, I think Electric Bastion Land might be my 4th. and that only has a single hit point track in it. So, or no, it has hit protection, I should say, and then your strength starts taking damage. But there's no like mental health that gets tracked in any way. And I don't think that's necessarily a problem because that's not what the game is about. So, from my perspective, when you have a gritty game and you have a game that like touches on horror themes, again, I like the horror genre, so I tend to be drawn to games like that. Then absolutely, if you want a bit of grittiness, you want a bit of horror, then it makes a lot of sense, I think, for there to be some form of a mental health track. So, those are all my questions. So, thank you very much for my Patreon supporters for giving me those questions. Next month, for those of you watching, wait for the Patreon post to come out, which asks for questions. Then you need to drop them in the comments, and I will answer them at the end of August. If you're watching this after I've recorded it, as somebody who's not a Patreon supporter, take a look at my Patreon page in the description below, because I offer a lot of... I don't offer a lot of cool things. I think I offer a lot of cool things. I'm trying to make... I'm a busy guy with a podcast and this channel and trying to write stuff as well. And I'm trying to get the balance right with offering things to my Patreon supporters without creating a mountain of work for myself. So there's some subtle rewards there, but mainly it's more about if you like what I'm doing with the channel, you're interested in the games I'm working on, then really it's just a way to kind of support me financially. And there's only one tier. It's $2 minimum buy-in, and the idea is just, if you want to throw me a little bit of money to say, good on you, keep going, that helps to keep the wheels running, and it's a great motivation for me as well. And these Q&As are one way that I give back to my Patreon supporters. So thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next month for the next Q&A. Otherwise, I'll be catching you very soon for the next episode of Forbidden Lands, which is the next episode to go live on the channel. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.